They expelled him, not chased, not attacked, expelled. 17 crows. One target, coordinated, silent. The target was one of their own. The study was conducted between 2011 and 2015 by researchers at the University of Vienna, Fraser, Thomas Bugnyar, and colleagues, observing common ravens in semi-natural group settings. The researchers were not looking for exclusion. They were studying conflict resolution. They were mapping who reconciled with whom after fights, who intervened, who stayed away. What they found instead was a pattern they had not designed the study to detect. Certain individuals, after specific sequences of behavior, were systematically avoided by the group, not just by those directly involved, by the group. The behavior had a structure. It had a trigger. It had consistency across individuals. Social scientists have a name for this kind of collective exclusion. In human contexts, they call it ostracism. The question the Vienna data raised was not behavioral, it was structural. What, exactly, constitutes a betrayal inside a raven group? The answer begins with affiliation. Ravens, like humans, form stable bonds within larger groups. Two individuals that groom each other share food, defend each other in conflicts. They are affiliated. They are, in the study's technical language, partners. Affiliation creates obligation. When a raven's partner is attacked by a third party, the affiliated bird is expected to intervene, or at minimum to support, not to attack the aggressor necessarily, but not to side with the aggressor. The Vienna researchers documented what happened when an individual failed to meet this expectation, not through punishment from the partner directly, through reconfiguration of the group. The betrayed bird reduced affiliative contact with the defector. Other group members, those affiliated with the betrayed bird, followed. Gradually, systematically, the defector's social network contract. This is not abstraction. This is measurable. The researchers quantified affiliative acts per hour: allopreening, food sharing, proximity maintenance, before and after betrayal events. The drop was statistically significant. It persisted across days. There is a second mechanism, documented separately. Ravens engage in post-conflict affiliation, what primatologists call reconciliation. After two individuals fight, one approaches the other with appeasement behavior. Contact is re-established. Tension decreases. But reconciliation requires both parties. In the Vienna data, individuals classified as defectors, those who had sided with a third party against their own partner, were systematically refused reconciliation. The partner turned away. The approach was not completed. Refusal was not random. It was targeted. It followed the betrayal event with a latency, short enough to establish causality. This is where the cold logic of the data becomes difficult to process cleanly, because what the Vienna study documented is not punishment in the colloquial sense. It is something more precise. It is the withdrawal of the infrastructure of belonging. The defector is not attacked. The defector is not driven out by force. The defector's network collapses. The social architecture around them is quietly, systematically dismantled. What happens next, whether the individual reintegrates, leaves, or remains in isolation, the study measured as well. Reintegration was possible, but it required an active behavioral sequence from the defector, not just time, not just proximity. The approach had to be made, the behavior had to change, and the change had to be legible to the group. There is a second study that runs parallel to the Vienna data and complicates the picture further. In 2009, Christine Drery and colleagues at Duke University, working with rooks, a Corvid species closely related to ravens, documented what is technically classified as mob behavior. Coordinated collective aggression, directed at a specific individual within the group. A mob is not disorganized. This is important. The initiating individuals, typically those most directly affected by the target's prior behavior, begin the exclusion. But secondary participants join without direct cause. They join because the social signal is legible. Something in the group's behavioral display communicates. This individual is outside the boundary. The signal propagates. What makes this difficult to classify is that it requires something that looks structurally like social consensus. Not agreement reached through deliberation, but agreement reached through behavioral coordination. Each individual responding to the cues of the others. A cascade that produces collective action without a center. This is the same mechanism documented in human mob behavior. The resemblance is architectural, not metaphorical. A third line of evidence comes from a study specifically on third-party affiliation. Claudia Wascher and Thomas Bugnyar, 2013, they documented that ravens form evaluative assessments of third-party interactions. An individual that observes a conspecific behaving aggressively toward a partner will subsequently treat that conspecific with increased wariness, reduced affiliative contact, increased avoidance. The raven does not need to be directly involved in the conflict to update its social model. It watches, it registers, it remembers. This means the social information inside a raven group is not localized. The betrayal event does not stay between the two parties. It radiates. Other individuals update their models. The defector's reputation, in the functional, not metaphorical sense, changes across the group. The group knows. If you have ever watched a group of crows suddenly converge on one specific bird, not to feed, not to fly, and felt that something structured was happening, you were not wrong. That behavior has been documented, classified, and studied. It has a mechanism. What you observed, tell us in the comments. There is a moment in the Vienna data that the researchers do not emphasize, but that is difficult to move past quickly. It occurs in the reintegration attempts. The defector approaches. The behavior has changed. The affiliative signals are present, but the partner does not respond immediately. There is a latency, a gap between the signal and the response. In human contexts, we would call that gap suspicion, hesitation. The work of re-establishing trust after it has been broken. The researchers do not use those words. They describe latency in affiliative response, reduced rate of approach acceptance, conditional reintegration, contingent on behavioral consistency over time. The language is precise. The thing it is describing is harder to name precisely. What the Vienna study does not answer, and what its own authors acknowledge remains open, is the question of subjective experience. We can document that the group withdraws. We can document that the defector's affiliative network collapses. We can document the latency and reintegration, and its contingency on behavior change. We cannot document what it is like from inside the isolated bird's nervous system. To have the group turn. There is a concept in social neuroscience, social pain, that researchers like Naomi Eisenberger have documented. Activates the same neural pathways in humans as physical pain. The neurological infrastructure for ostracism and for injury overlaps. Whether that infrastructure exists in Corvids is not currently answerable. The imaging technology has not been adapted for ravens in field conditions. The question is not closed. It is simply not yet open. What the data gives us is this: a raven that violates the social contract of its group through betrayal, through defection, through failure to affiliate when affiliation was expected, does not simply lose a relationship. It loses access to the group itself. And the group, the 17 who expelled without coordinating the decision, who simply responded to a shared signal that none of them had to articulate. The group continues. The question the data stops at is not whether this constitutes judgment. It is whether the raven that was expelled knows why. For a long time, we held a distinction that seemed to explain something important about ourselves. The distinction was this: only humans organize moral exclusion. Only humans construct a social order in which certain behaviors trigger collective responses: withdrawal, expulsion, reorganization of the group around the absence of one. We called this justice, or punishment, social contract, depending on the framework. We called it human. The Vienna data and the Duke data do not claim that ravens have morality. The researchers are careful with language. They describe behavioral mechanisms. They quantify affiliative acts. They measure latency. but the mechanisms they describe, betrayal registered by the group, social network contraction, conditional reintegration, contingent on behavioral change, are the functional architecture of something we, in human contexts, call accountability. What this says about the nature of social order, about whether the structures we use to bind groups together are inventions or convergent solutions, is still being processed. But there is one implication that is already clear. If coordinated social exclusion evolved independently in Corvids, it is not a human institution. It is a solution to the problem of maintaining coherence inside a group, where individuals have competing interests and the capacity to defect. The group does not need to agree. It only needs to respond to the same signal. The next time you see a group of crows suddenly fall quiet around one of their own, pay attention to which one they are not looking at. If you live near Corvids, watch for the one that stays at the edge, the one the others are near but never with. What you observe, share here. Next video. The inverse. What Corvids do when a human does something for them, not something to them. The behavior has been documented. What science has not established is the intention behind it.